Fortnite World Cup issues continue as we enter into number 5, weekend number 5 that is in the breakdown. I hope you guys all enjoy. This past weekend was pretty crazy. At the very least, there were no cheating allegations that I know of right now. We'll break down your top stories and of course the players who grabbed their World Cup spots in this past weekend solo qualifier. As I said before, week number 5, and this time around the in-game issues though, well, they were just about what we expect right now when it comes to Epic. They released an update on Wednesday and the game was utterly broken by of course Friday through Sunday as well. The first of which, one of the many glitches out there, that being the baller, was universally broken after being universally apparently fixed with the Wednesday update. If you guys remember this, they actually fixed all the keybinds to make them universal across all vehicles, and well, people had this baller bug, actually so much so that they actually went ahead and banned all vehicles, that being for Sunday's finals. So a pretty big issue, right? Yeah, imagine not having vehicles that help you qualify, but you're in the finals without being able to use them. Obviously, many players out there do use them to the best of their advantages. Maybe this time around we got better players in because there were no vehicles for the Sunday finals, but either way, a huge game-breaking bug, and obviously going to cost some people their spots if they largely use that as a part of their playstyle, which many pro players out there do. Even, I guess you could say worse off, the inconsistent damage of the newest combat shotgun, actually proven by Daquan in his video on Twitter first.
Center mass of the head, boys. Center mass. The center mass possibly can get it. Okay, that was pretty good.
Shot. And the third. Well, you hit a lot of damage at first.
I don't understand.
That makes sense.
And now apparently being fixed slowly but surely, Epic has released at least one hot fix for it to apparently help in some direction. Is it fully fixed? With Epic, we can highly doubt that, but great for many people to point that out there, and they are at least going in the right direction on fixing that shotgun. But the issues did continue. In terms of queuing issues, we saw this last week. The Liquid Boys and many other pro players were having problems even getting into the queue itself, and has cost supposedly at least a few players out there potential spots for the World Cup, and obviously a large amount of prize pool money as well. This time around, Kinstar, unfortunately enough, that actually the same issue did hit him, and he was unable to queue, likely costing him, or at least what some people think, costing him another spot in the World Cup, which again, this queuing issue has hit many pro players out there, and it continues to be a huge issue.
C'est pas du jeu. Et voilà, fallait faire comme Monsieur Issa. C'est clairement pas du jeu par contre. 3 minutes 40 de queue et il va pas proc, vraiment? Oh! 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 Allez! Non! No!
And then lastly, yeah, the problems are the highlight of today's video. It does continue. For the fourth issue we're going to talk about, actually AGO member Zeke, he actually had one of his lobbies or his queues being invalidated because he hopped into a lobby after queuing and it was actually just 13 players. You know, people freaked out about this. He ended up winning the game, and Epic's response was to invalidate the lobby and of course that score along with it, which is probably the right call as long as Zeke got to play out all of his full matches because of the time wasted doing that. It's just kind of a big issue because across the entire board of pro players, how many pro players are we going to be able to catch who had smaller queue sizes, because he was not the only member to do so. So actually Zeke's did place around top 50 out of EU. He did not manage to qualify, but if he had that lobby score with him, he would have been a lot closer. So we don't know how many pro players took advantage of smaller queues, but at least a few did have that issue. And then very last, before getting to, of course, the players out there who did actually get their spots, I have to say one of the best clips we have seen probably across all the weekends so far. Savage doing some pretty savage things with this outplay right here.
He's using it perfectly.
Wow.
And making me look like an idiot.
Damn.
Me too, I'm an idiot.
Building on up, 22 builds remaining. The spray comes in a 72 tag, another
Just
elimination.
lays that guy.
Wins this game. They've got to go up the side of a
crap.
mountain, and it's shadow bomb time. Look at how awkward this is.
Oh, he's
now.
invis.
He's getting
Oh my
completely
God.
blocked that out. He's deciding to take this.
Oh! He says, lay the bitch.
my
Get a tag on him,
God.
Savage.
The best shadow
Holy shit! Spider-Man!
rising to the
God
Holy
damn,
shit.
dude!
But anyway, finally what you guys are probably here for, the breakdown of the results out there. There's not too much happening. Of course, NA East has continued to be one of our most competitive servers out there. For me personally, I don't know about you guys, it's been by far and away the most fun one to watch as competition does continue. But Dubs FN has now consistently proven himself as if not one of the better players in North America, if not the world right now. Now 3 weekends he has qualified for the World Cup. Technically, of course, you can only qualify once per division or per play style, that being solos or duos. But now, yet again, another first place finish. This guy it's absolutely nuts. Also alongside that, as you guys can see, his partner Mega also managed to qualify. So a pretty cool story there. And NRG Zate as well, which means 3 NRG boys have now actually qualified for both solos and duos in Zate, Benji, and Savage. And again, like I said before, NA East to me has been just super fun to watch the competition unravel. And I am super curious as well when we talk about smaller regions compared to bigger regions, how these players will produce when it comes time for World Cup. But as of right now, you have to say that Dubs is definitely one of the biggest threats when it comes to solos at the World Cup finals. Moving on to NA West as well, not too much happening. You guys know, obviously far less competitive than NA East. But when it comes to NA West, it's actually River Sand proving himself to be kind of like the Dubs FN of NA East, because yet again, another strong run for himself. He does technically qualify in that first place spot, already has his spot solidified though, and it will go to Zuz and Rux instead. But either way, only real competition. I always look out for Nicky Merckx and his partner Neo in these playlists. Not really too good of spots if they even made the Sunday finals this time around. NA West though, River Sand is dominating the competition. As we move to our next best competitive scene compared to NA East, that being Europe, the competition, well, it was also pretty stellar to watch, although some debatable clips out there of players who met some unfortunate ends we'll talk about in a second. Letchi dominated the field with an absolutely incredible performance. Savage yet again, he finally actually got his spot, well deserved. As I said before, NRG's now 3rd player to double qualify for solos and duos. You see Black Sue back there, Mitro as well. Sadly enough though, when it comes to Kinstar, just that close. You have that one miscue, and we saw this in the past weeks as well. We have seen this now a couple times with some top finishing pro players out there. One miscue, one bug on Epic side of the game has certainly potentially cost Kinstar his also spot in the World Cup for now, which is always just, it's super sad to see a pro player get ripped off, not by his own actions, but by the game itself. And although it doesn't really matter for Benji, not his best performance either this past weekend. Along with that, Fnatic Motor, I've always kept an eye on him. I've always loved his personality, and ever since these opening weeks is actually his worst weekend performance so far. So hoping he can bounce back in a couple weeks yet again for solos, because he has been typically a top 20 finisher across that, and also some decent duos placements. But for solos, definitely a guy I'm keeping an eye out for, that being Fnatic Motor. So kind of sad to see a disappointing weekend from him. But as we hop into, of course, our 3 lesser regions, not too many notable names for all of you, so we usually kind of fly by these as we probably should. But I'm certainly curious how these players will do amongst the bigger players known at Worlds. Not a long list of recognizable names from really any of them, especially when you have Link takes OCE, Peter Pan takes Asia with a bunch of new newbie players, and we see plenty of orgs out there signing a bunch of fresh faces for these World Cup qualifiers. And then very lastly, when it comes to our last region out of Brazil, we do see W7M continuing to dominate as well. The Cuts, I'm not really good with Brazilian names out there, but he manages to qualify. Several W7M members also breaking the top 50, with Blackouts also having one of his better runs so far as well. He's most widely noted as a top Brazilian player. We've kept an eye out for him as well, and he comes away with a borderline top 20 finish. So closing in on there, but definitely seeing a lot of INS players, a lot of W7M org players actually coming out of Brazil. When it comes to Asia, and especially this time around OCE, we're seeing a lot less notable players out there. So I'm very, very curious how these somewhat no names, or kind of low names, I guess I can call them, will compete against the big tigers, the big cats when it comes to World Cup finals. And as always, I hope you guys all enjoy. Yet again, we are now 5 straight weeks of big World Cup issues. It's almost shocking, but at this point, I'm almost accepting it, and I think you guys are as well. Every time I see you guys on camera, we're talking about some big Fortnite issues, whether it's cheaters, whether it's in-game issues, whether it's been a slew of issues out there. This time around, all of Epic's issues continuing to hurt players out there from their chances at World Cup, and it's kind of devastating to see such a lack of attention. And it's also really crazy to see they continue to shout out these updates like the universal key bindings for these vehicles, obviously clearly not tested with how much they broke the ballers, and they just shell it out anyway and potentially cost a lot of players some potential World Cup spots. As always, my name is Jake. I hope you guys all enjoy. I'll be back here, of course, next week or later this week, more Fortnite news out there. And I always say this, but hopefully next time I see you, it'll be happier news.